everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on AI revolutions, the future of job and wealth. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David Smith from IBEON. We have Sharidan Tatsuno. He's a very famous on entrepreneurship, and we have very experienced entrepreneur. Uh, right now, I think he's in Asia Pacific regions. He is Mr. PJ. So first, I would like to give
Yeah, I'm here.
chance.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Mhm.
I can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So first, I have a question for Mr. David Smith. What you want to discuss about AI revolutions, and you can discuss about your innovations and about your company also, because we are heavily work with different ministries in Bangladesh, especially ICT ministries. We are developing AI strategy and policy for Bangladesh. So all of your discussions and dialogues, we will use it, and we will invite you in our projects also. Uh, Mr. David Smith.
Well, Sharif, thank you so much for this today because the, uh, the fusion of data and artificial intelligence where we are right now is really reshaping the landscapes of jobs and actually wealth and commerce in really profound ways. So artificial intelligence is really automating tasks, sorry, across industries, from wealth management, manufacturing, law, services, everything in between. And this is leading to increased efficiencies, into product, increased productivity. And one of the very interesting things that directly affects your topic on this today is that this fusion of data and artificial intelligence in its various forms and flavors is really doing it on a global basis, where many times in the past, as we looked at jobs and wealth, they have been more geographically based. The AI tools and stuff today that we're using are allowing us to do this on a global basis. Next week, I'm actually one of the speakers at a conference where we're talking about some of this topic. I'm talking about where the future of AI and data is going and all the issues. But what's interesting to me is we look at this, particularly with jobs and wealth, is artificial intelligence is only as brilliant as the data it stands upon. Without quality data, even the most advanced AI is like a castle built on sand. And as I look at your question as we go through this one today, that's the what we have to do as we look at the job displacement, as we look at the job creation, because these are all basically using these tools like they were built on sand there. So we're seeing it hit in many different ways because we've heard a lot in the press about job displacement because many routine and repetitive tasks are being taken over by AI systems. Even things like writing code is being taken over more and more by AI systems that where the code and the product doesn't require empathy. But we also see it going the other way and creating a bunch of new jobs as well. And we're going to see a shift, a dramatically shift in the workforce skills and roles that are needed for this. And we're going to see other things come in place to be able to help mitigate this, particularly very enhanced training programs and other ways to help mitigate some of the income. So on the job displacement side, some of the biggest places of the initial ones loss is going to be in manufacturing because we've seen a trend starting decades ago where automation and robots are replacing repetitive tasks. And we're seeing that now extend further into medium sized and small business. We already know retail has changed dramatically, customer service. You know, you almost cannot go into a company today where chat bots and virtual assistants are not helping you with that. And like I said, it's even hitting traditional areas that have been little bit isolated from this. We see in law that many of the entry level lawyers and paralegals, where they do not argue in front of a court or a jury, are being replaced by AI tools. We see it, as I said earlier, in software development, very much so. But on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of job creation in some of the areas. For example, in healthcare, AI is creating roles in medical data analysis and personalized treatment, and AI-driven diagnostics and others. That is where, Sharif, as you mentioned, our platform at IBEON is hitting very big because of putting the AI tools and the interoperability in places that can help support this type of growth. You're also seeing job growth actually in education, because with the rise of these AI-powered learning tools like our Universal Tutor, you're seeing it generating jobs in content creation, in educational technology, in AI training that were not there before. And this whole new area of using things like what we're doing with 3D conversational AI avatars, the amount of new job creation to support that, to do that type of learning, not just on a regional basis, on a global basis, which we can with the use of these AI tools, is going to create a lot more people having to get involved with it. The same thing in technology. We're seeing more and more opportunities for new people in development and data science and cybersecurity. But like I said, many people are facing challenges adapting to these AI roles that they're going to need to perform because of lack of training and education. And we expect to see economic growth change some, but eventually be actually even more accelerated, because while some jobs are being displaced, AI is really expected to drive economic growth by what we've said, enhancing productivity. And what we're beginning to see now is that we will be creating entirely new industries where this is going to be enabled. Dr. Sharif, you've heard me speak before about how these tools are letting our ecosystems change from vertical ecosystems to horizontally converged ecosystems. And these horizontally converged ecosystems is what is going to really empower us and accelerate us in job growth, to replace the jobs that are going to be displaced from the traditional vertical ecosystem. So I hope that answers your question, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Mr. Sharidan Tarsino, you are brilliant innovators, and I'm closely work with your team, especially with your Gayapoli strategy. Even in Bangladesh, with the city corporations, we are deploying your innovation right now, especially your Gayapoli strategy with our climate leadership program. Beside that, you have a brilliant startup, Amidis. Why am I sharing this concept? Because country like Bangladesh, India, or Pakistan, where we have a lot of audience, we need to improve our healthcare. So how your revolutions can add values, number one, for policy development, especially city development and city planning, and for healthcare.
Okay, very good. Hi, I'm Sheridan Tatsuno. I'm in San Francisco. I would like to reiterate what David said, because that pretty much sets the overall ecosystem of what's happening. A little backgrounder. 10 years ago, I spoke with a lawyer in San Francisco, and I said, what is the future of AI? Well, how will it affect? He said, it already has. And LexisNexis eliminated 80% of the jobs required for discovery on large lawsuits. And so instead of 10 to 12 lawyers, they only needed 2. And so that's why there was a very slow hiring by big corporation law firms 10 years ago. And on the other hand, he said it would, because of that, there's nothing to prevent the small law firms, the people, independents, to compete directly with the large law firms because they have much lower overhead. So he saw a flattening of the jobs, fewer jobs in big corporations, a lot of startups. And that's what's been happening over the last 10 years. If you've been tracking the numbers for law firms using AI, LexisNexis, and now more the ChatGPT. So that's history. A little background. I work with iMedis. I'm the chief strategy officer. It's funded by doctors, started by doctors in Germany. So we've been using AI avatars for 8 years already. So AI is old for us. Under GDPR, which has stricter rules than HIPAA compliance, but we've been doing it for personalized medicine. Basically, we had a avatar named Ava. She's a kind of digital robot, and she knows, because we work with the hospitals, we have access to all the patient files. So it's hospital outpatient care, and so it's difficult for hospitals to track all the patients when they're at home. And so what this acts as a way to provide patient care when they're at home or walking around. So what you could talk, so the patients could talk to the doctor, or you could have inputs with monitors, and it tracks everything that they're doing, everything they say, all the interactions, any questions they have of AI robots and data. And they also could set up telehealth calls, calls or video calls, and they can also book appointments. Now, the most important thing is that we always keep the human in the loop, the doctor in the loop. And the reason is that AI generates false positives and false negatives, in which is dangerous. If you have a heart problem and AI says you're okay, but the doctors, when they look at it, said, no, come in, you're going to have a heart attack. And you need to do that under GDPR. And the reason is that besides patient safety, doctors don't want to lose their license. And if you lose a patient because you just rely on AI and didn't pay attention, you're not in compliance with the law. So the consequences, major legal and financial lawsuits. So that's a major reason why companies will keep, and hospitals will keep, patients, doctors in the loop, is that for legal and financial liability. So because of the danger of death and major lawsuits. So that's what we've learned so far with AI. Now, going forward, AI pretty much is going to do everything. We're already doing it now. iMedis has launched the virtual reality, virtual hospital, an Unreal Gaming Engine 5.2. And what we're doing is we're dropping the 3D avatars, which was flat earlier, into the 3D world. So we're offering it for rehab at home. And rehab is really painful and expensive for patients that are at home trying to get to the hospital to meet their rehab specialist. So what we're trying to develop now is the doctor can either use AR or VR. So for example, they can teach patients how to take care of themselves in a VR world, like 2 avatars, just showing them how to do it. And then if they want to do it in the real world, then what you do is you just have it in your, let's say, living room, and then you use AR, and then the doctor shows up as an avatar. And then so what we're going to need is body capture, motion capture for the patient, so they can see their movement in the AR, in their own bedroom or living room, and then the virtual doctor next to them. So that's really where it's going. And there's 2 real benefits of AI for medicine. One is that it's just cheaper. I mean, it's 80% of the patients don't need to go to the hospital. They just need to get meds or whatever advice. So it's cheaper, faster, and better. And then secondly, you can do with VR, you could do training in 3D, or either with a flat panel, or and some people, they wear headsets, but you can see things in 3D because the body's 3-dimensional. You need better resolution. But anyway, so those are the major findings that we had in terms of medicine. Now, I don't want to go too far, but Gaiopolis, I agree with David that the horizontal integration of all the different knowledge, city planning, pollution, traffic, healthcare, noise, and medicine right now are in silos. And we've been unable to access all the data and integrate it. So AI, ideally, with this in a 3D world, will just integrate everything at once. Because I'm an urban planner, and we have to source all types of data. And right now you can't do it. So what I'd like to see in the 3D world is that on demand, you could just pull up any data, transportation data, traffic data, utility data, taxes, policies, whatever you want, on command by location, specific location, whether it's a block or a district or a whole city. So I think that horizontal integration is probably going to be the biggest, because what's going to happen, we're going to move from specialized jobs, what AI eliminates that. Rather, integration at the project level, where you're managing complex environments with a lot of people, that's where humans have to be, because the problem is you don't see what you don't ask. You have to prompt. So you have to be able to say, wait a minute, what if we saw this? What if we saw that? And if you don't ask it, you're not going to see it in AI or VR. So you have to be, we always say there's two things. In terms of science, it's the scientific method. You have to be very scientific and ask like scientists do constantly, and then think logically. And then in terms of the software side, it's more of a Socratic method. What if we did that? What if we did that? And ask these deeper philosophical, ethical questions for medicine that people aren't asking. Like, if we did this, would it cause COVID to spread among seniors over 75? Like, nobody asks that. But with AI, you pull it up immediately and say, okay, there's 40,000 people in your district. 25% are likely to get it. Don't do the event. Very simple. But right now, they can't do that. So, you could lose a lot of, and they say if you held it, 5 patients are going to die, or people. So don't hold the event. So, that's the level of specificity that AI can do, not just 2D numbers and charts, but actually 3D. So that's why we're looking forward to the future of AI and how it can help people in healthcare and medicine.
Excellent. Mr. PJ, you have a huge experience from Asia Pacific. So what's your thoughts about AI revolutions?
Well, I use it every day, and I can't live without it. And I can't keep up with the changes. It's just unbelievable. Every day is more exciting than the day before. And I used to have a team of about 15 people working on a startup, unrelated to some of the stuff that I'm doing, but working out of my office. And now we don't have anybody working in the office because everyone was laid off except for 3 people. And now there's only 2 people working on it, and they work from home. And they get more done than the whole team of 15 people. So yeah, it's really changing things, and I use it all the time. I'm not really using it for coding, but I have people that I work with that are doing amazing things with just describing what they want, and working on it. Also using AI agents with Klein, and doing amazing things. And I use it mostly for writing marketing things, and for brainstorming ideas, and I use multiple AIs, because you get different answers, and I like to look at all angles, and then I come up with my own stuff once I get the AI back. I just keep refining it, and it's doing some great work.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. My next question for you: what role does AI play in reshaping global wealth distribution, and will it wide or narrow economic inequality?
Well, Dr. Sharif, one of the things that PJ said I'd like to emphasize as I start this answer is, and you've heard this from me before, in that you should use multiple AI systems, even with the same question. Dr. Sharif, since you've seen our system, you know that we can do that through just API calls in our platform. But I love it. I've asked 6 different AI systems just a simple question. I have the flu. What should I do? You would not believe how vastly different the answers are to a simple question like that. But you begin to look at your answer on what does AI play in really reshaping the global wealth distribution and its impact on economic inequities. It is going to be a transformational role, and it's going to have the potential to both narrow and widen this economic inequity, depending on what you're doing, how it's implemented, and where you are. So how can it narrow? the inequity. It's going to let us really bring a lot more opportunity to democratize, I guess is a good way to put it, access to essential services like education, healthcare, financial tools, especially for underserved regions. And this goes back to where I said my opening question to you, that this type of AI tool is going to be a global basis and not just regional. So just to give you an example, to build on Sheridan has talking about, AI platforms can provide personalized healthcare. It can provide personalized learning. It can bring new services and things to remote areas. And by enhancing this productivity and creating the new industries I talked about before, AI really has the potential to boost economic growth and generate wealth across various sectors. It will be where you're going to see some of the biggest impact of this type of narrowing inequality is in developing and emerging economies. It's like we saw times after conflict where we would jump generations in what we did with telecommunication networks, for example. Well, you're going to have the same thing with these AI tools. You're going to let developing countries, developing areas jump generations as you begin to see these AI tools put in place, and that will narrow the inequality. But there's going to be places where it's going to widen it too. Wealth and it will benefit from being concentrated in countries and companies with advanced infrastructure and resources. And that's one of the reasons why developing countries need to focus so much right now on infrastructure, communications infrastructure. But we're seeing things with like Starlink and others like that are helping us, again, jump those divides even more. But this type of differences between where countries have and do not have advanced infrastructure will create a divide. The growth of a lot of these AI tools we have right now disproportionately affect low-skilled jobs. So you're going to see job displacement and income disparities. But Dr. Sharif, like we talked about all the time on your program, we're in a time of lifelong learning. And these concepts of lifelong learning are going to be accelerated, tremendously accelerated, as we look at how AI is going to create new industries, new startups, all of this as we begin to see it. So even though it's widening some inequity, the fact that we can have the opportunity to totally rethink how we do lifelong learning because of this will create great opportunities. And this digital divide is going to limit access to some AI technologies for lower income people and communities. But there's places where, for example, government and organizations will play really a crucial role in making sure that this AI adoption and the tools and the capabilities and infrastructure are equitable. So there need to be policies put in place to promote education, to promote rescaling of our capabilities, and to really address the infrastructure and things that are needed to do it. So even though it has both the ability to narrow the inequities and widen the inequities, this is a dual-edged transformation. But I think on the whole, it's going to create more opportunities and capabilities.
Thank you. Mr. Sheridan, I have very specific question for you. As AMEDIS has new innovations and new healthcare innovations, how it create more economic opportunity for Bangladesh or for India or
Okay.
for healthcare industry?
All right. First of all, let's see. Cost is the big issue. Besides access, actually, let's go back to access because that's a big issue. The opportunity to set up a satellite network, right, as well as community hotspots that are free access. So the government should invest in infrastructure, either they don't have to set up satellite. They could basically, there are so many commercial satellites nowadays that they should just have 2 or 3 on a competitive bidding basis to provide universal coverage for cheap mobile or free mobile services. And nowadays with AI, you could base it on income, so it could be progressive charging. In other words, if you're very poor, it's free. If you have money, then they charge you, and so the rich subsidize the poor, and that's all. That can all be automated today. So there's no reason why government shouldn't do that right now and just use the existing commercial satellite vendors and use actually competitive bidding. So we're going to see a lot of, sort of like demand, communication demand pricing and availability, where based on the satellite rates, it's going to hop like hot swapping between satellite companies to provide the cheapest prices. That will get prices down between the competitors. And then government shouldn't set up satellites, even US now, like NASA, for low orbit. It's all being commercialized because, as they say, NASA costs 10 times as much to do anything that a company can do because it's a monopoly and not. So you want to take advantage of competition between the providers for access. And then look at how Africa did it too, for cell phones. The other opportunity too is that even if you have access, then people don't know how to use it. So you need what will happen to begin. You should have local service providers, creates a lot of jobs. So, for example, you have a woman who knows how to use AI on her phone, and so she could teach other people, and then also sell phones to people who don't have access right now. So that's a hot business, sort of like the solar cookers were in Africa. So, you have a whole network of entrepreneurs selling training as well as the phones to make money until people come up. And then over time, they won't need them, but, they'll move into higher levels. So let's say a woman teaching other women how to do health baby care, for example, practical things on the phone using AI. They could do that, sell the phones, have classes, offer special hands-on training as not just AI, because you need hands-on to show and tell, and then using AR, which is what we do now. And so you can have both virtual reality on the phone, just flat with a flat panel, as well as in situ or AR for that. And then over time, that woman, or collective woman, they could become their own medical clinic, providing midwives with training on baby care, things like that. So it creates a lot of jobs because it's one thing about medicine, it's very labor intensive. Even with AI, you have to touch people, right? You can't just like show robots because that's just fantasy land and it's wrong often. So you need to integrate AR using the real life babies with the digital babies that you're showing. And that's going to take a lot of hands-on training because each region is very different and different practices, religious practices, ethical practices. So you have to tailor it for the community. So that's on a practical level what you need to do for bringing AI to local people. Now, the other one we're looking at, there's others, is cheap pricing. So you could provide free. We're actually thinking of pricing very low. So, for example, the business model could be $1 or $2 a month, for example, and the goal is to get 100 million users worldwide. So $100 million a year is not bad for a business. $100 million a month in revenues is not bad. And so I think we're going to see small companies with a handful of people generating $100 million a year in business. Their companies could be worth like $20 billion. And that's going to happen in the next year or two. Because if I can imagine it, there's all these smart entrepreneurs who will move much faster than me. I think we're going to see an explosion of entrepreneurship in Bangladesh, and they're not going to wait for government. What will happen is that though this cobbled together systems work directly with commercial providers, already pull together some capital and some friends, pull together their own systems, and they're up and rolling. And the hard part for government is going to be managing all the compliance, because for medicine, things like that, you have to worry about compliance. So government's role is not provide the service. It's going to be making sure that they're playing the ethically and then the rules to set up the, basically proper governance. That's the proper role of governance anyway, is make sure it's not the Wild West. We have scams, which are going to proliferate. So we're going to see a huge explosion in scams, phishing, things like that. So government's role is to stop all that and enforce the law and make sure that people are not cheated and not given false information, which is going to be a big problem. Then the other opportunity we see is gamifying. So one of the things I talk to people in Africa, and I asked this one friend of mine, and I said, let me ask you, what percent of the population is young? And it goes, 80% is under 20. Do they ever play games? He goes, they're all on phones. They're all playing games already. You don't have to teach these kids. They're already on the phone. So what opportunity we see is that we can gamify. Actually, our CEO is a doctor. He's a game developer, Unreal. And he wants to gamify medicine and do it this way. The problem with medicine is this damage control. It's like after you get sick, it's really expensive and scary and frightening. So what we're looking at is preventive healthcare. That's my job as urban planner. And to make it prevention for everything, food, health, exercise, meditation, everything, baby care, to prevent illnesses and sickness. So you don't have to go to the doctor. In that sense, it's the phone and gamification is what we're doing today, except for entertainment. So what's going to happen is that the gaming industry, as you know, is having massive layoffs. It's only a $200 billion business. Healthcare is into the trillions of dollars. So one of the things we're going to see is a massive diffusion of gamers into healthcare, construction, engineering, all the verticals, and then horizontals. So they're going to be bringing their gaming models into healthcare and everything. So, and the good part about that is kids already know how to play games. So the training needs to be really fast. The kids are going to pick it up and then teach mom and dad and grandma. So it's going to be a bottom-up revolution, not top-down this time.
Excellent. Mr. PJ, so
Yeah.
what's your thought about the role does AI play in reshaping global wealth distributions?
Well, I'm working on some projects that are with people who don't even have electricity. And I'm teaching them how to use AI, and it's definitely changing their lives. It's helping them to improve their English. And I'm just getting started, but it's really been amazing in the last month or so since I climbed up the mountain and showed them how to use it. The biggest problem is connection to the internet, but they are able to get some connections, and eventually I'm going to get a Starlink up there, and hopefully I've had some discussions with Rihan Alawala about creating a school up there as a test, and teach people just with AI. And I think it can really change things because what's being taught in the local schools is totally useless. And a lot of times what happens is, like, ever since the pandemic, the school's always coming up with an excuse of why they should just go home and work from modules, and not have a regular school day. Like it's too hot, or there's a teachers conference, and like several times a week there's a problem where, oh, just stay home and work online. But that doesn't teach people. AI can do it much better because it can know the conversation and know what needs to be corrected, and it's a real personal experience for the student.
Thank you. Uh, Excellent discussions. Mr. David, my next question for you, how can business and government collaborate to ensure a smooth transition into AI-driven economy? This is very, very important for emerging economy. And as we heavily work in emerging economy, different government agencies like ICT ministries, like different corporations, uh, still they are struggling that how they collaborate with corporations. So what's your thought?
Well, are you talking about to me?
He was,
David.
PJ was asking me, but I love your concept of climbing the mountain to help them and seeing the elements there. But
Yeah, I'm working on a project that has a lot of rural properties that we're going to attract a lot of people to visit there and also get involved with the community. And we're going to be doing some farming. We're in the process of creating an agricultural co-op. It's a really interesting project that I'm working on. I'm not really ready to talk about the whole thing, but eventually I'll come back on here and talk about it and have a website to go along with it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But one
Thank
thing I have to say is, you talk about working with the government. It's too frustrating sometimes. For me, I'm just going to blaze my own path and not worry about the government because the government's going to take 30 years to catch up with my concept. So I've designed it in such a way that what I'm doing is legal. It's not exactly the way I want it because you can't record it, record things on the government blockchain, but eventually that will happen. But I'm not waiting for them.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
what's interesting to
Yeah.
answer your question, Dr. Sharif, is I live in Austin, Texas, and we've uh, gone through the essence of your question here many times, and you've heard us talk about. We developed a concept here called the Technopolis, which Sheridan is familiar with, where it takes the government, it takes education, including higher education, it takes companies of all sizes, and it pulls them together to work collaboratively for the future. And that's one of the reasons why Austin went from a very sleepy capital city with a university to a really dynamic technology hub, a biotech hub, and actually a space hub now, as we see what's happening in our community through the concept of this Technopolis concept of all these groups working together. And that's what's going to be required as we answer your question, Sharif, about how we can ensure this smooth transition to that area. Because we saw that, for example, when Sematech, a consortium in the semiconductor space, was brought to Austin, we had to pull all those together to retrain people, to train them in the other things, to get the suppliers, to get all that in place. And it's exactly what we need to do with an AI-driven economy as you look there. So you're going to see on the government side, there has to be, like we talked before, policy development and redevelopment and rules change to help support this. Governments can create policies that encourage responsible AI adoption, ensuring ethical use and looking at the other sides of it. But they also can help by setting innovation zones where there's benefits for the startups that we've talked about, particularly in AI, and coming together to enhance this capability, enhance the capability in the regions. And this type of policy development around the reskilling of people and the new education. And businesses need to collaborate with the other people in the Technopolis by sharing insights and data to help shape regulations that are both effective and innovation friendly. Because that's the problem we see where people say, I want to go around them because they weren't involved in the ability to help set these regulations. Their voices weren't heard. And that's where this Technopolis concept becomes so critical because it uses group intelligence. You're going to see in the education side of that, joint initiatives need to be put into place that can fund and implement programs to reskill workers for these AI-related roles. This is really necessary because, like I said earlier, many of the initial jobs being displaced are the lower skill workforces, even though it's now dramatically moving up the pathway. So you need to put these joint initiatives to address these job displacement concerns. And public-private partnerships can establish AI-focused educational institutions, boot camps, or other courses to prepare the future workforce. In many ways, like what Sheridan was talking about earlier, the younger generations who have grown up playing all type of games and things on their devices and things can really help play part of a role in this type of education strategy for the other generations and be a conduit there. we talked before, but we need to see infrastructure investments. And governments can invest in digital infrastructure, such as high-speed internet, satellite-based internet, cloud computing, edge of cloud computing, the development of sensors and Internet of Things type devices to support AI development. And this goes to all parts of it, just as Dr. Shreve, we've talked on your other programs. The growth of sensors, the growth of automation and robotics, for example, in agriculture, is revolutionary in that area. And the AI tools we're talking about with government can support can change that for a region dramatically. You know, a business needs to contribute by developing technologies that align with these public needs, like we said, in agriculture, in healthcare, in education, in manufacturing, in retail. And the business and the government coming together really can work well in this area around the infrastructure investment. Universities, colleges, others need to collaborate on research and innovation projects where they can drive AI investments while ensuring that with the diversity of this type of research and science and innovation, that they address the societal challenges of each of the regions. So governments can provide grants or incentives or university help to let business startups innovate responsibly. And finally on this one, and this one's the hard one with AI, is that we have to put in place transparent practices in AI development and deployment, where it's done ethically, where it's transparent with privacy and security, and where we can foster increased public trust in them. And so governments need to establish frameworks for accountability and oversight to ensure that AI benefits everyone. And these frameworks, once again, have to be global frameworks. They cannot be done something locally, something regional, or even something, I believe, nationally. We have to begin to look at global frameworks built around where the future of AI is headed and where the future of the data that enables AI is headed for it to be effective in today's world.
Thank you. Mr. Sheridan, what's your thoughts about government and business collaborations?
All right, very good. No, I want to again reiterate what both the other speakers said. Michael and David, and here's why. The reason, when I wrote Technopolis, okay, what happens? I spoke with the International Association of Science Parks, and they said it was the planning guideline for 1,000 members. All the tech parks were using it to build their Technopolis. And Austin was one of the fastest movers, probably one of the most successful, besides Israel and Scotland, places like that. So governments initiated it. It wasn't private industry because private companies didn't have the money and the clout and police powers to implement. So one of the things that we learned from Technopolis, and I can give you two specifics too, is that you need to have top-down government, corporate, and foreign investments to provide the governance, the ethics, the policies. Otherwise, you end up with the Wild West. The problem with bottom-up is that if it's uncontrolled, you end up with a lot of scammers and thefts and crooks and all that. So you have to have both top-down for the governance issue and then bottom-up, which is what Michael's talking about, because government's too slow and too bureaucratic, and they're out of touch, and it's too partisan and political. So that's where you have to have both. So I think actually Austin is a good example. They had top-down government, the state and everybody, and the corporations, and they had a lot of bottom-up communities, the students and different communities, and that's why Austin is very successful. I think there haven't been enough studies looking at the top-down, bottom-up approach that Austin did and how it succeeded. Now, quickly, that approach was used by Bangalore and India, the top-down, bottom-up. And actually, back in 1985, before I wrote Technopolis, the Consul General from India and San Francisco asked me if I could introduce big tech companies from Silicon Valley to a little place called Bangalore, and I said, never heard of it, to their tech park. They had one company, Texas Instrument. And the problem they had is brain drain. They created, the IITs, had a lot of graduates, and even it's harder to get into an IIT than MIT, but there were no jobs, like most places around the world. So all the educated Indians were leaving and never coming back. So they said, could we, instead of shipping Indians out of India, bring software into India? And I said, of course you can, except don't use satellite, put in a lot of dark fiber, go white fiber. I said, because it's too expensive to use satellite. And if you have to own the dark fiber in your companies, so then you could build whole industries with really cheap fiber. And so that's what India did. They laid in a lot of dark fiber into Bangalore, which is why they were able to grow so fast. Now, at the time, back in '85, we didn't have the internet. So it was very slow. We're using fax machines. When the internet hit, India was ready because they had the dark fiber, and it took off. And so the whole India software outsourcing industry exploded because they were ready with their tech park, their training, the government, PPP, the public-private partnerships. Everybody was working together. That's why I was able to take off. It took 4 or 5 years to get going. Today, Bangladesh could do it in real time. They could probably do it in what India did in 5 years and in 3 months today, because AI moves so fast. It's really moving real time. Now, one of the things I learned, it's up to the governments whether they want to act or not. Even if the citizens want it, they don't have the police and the power and the money to execute. So unless Bangladesh is serious, or any country is serious, they're going to remain in poverty forever. You can't. That's the difference between, let's say, Singapore, which took the lead, versus other Southeast Asian countries that are kind of lagging, is because Singapore just said, we're just going to lead out of poverty. And so I think study Singapore as a small nation that was in total poverty after World War II, and then is now at the very top. And it was because strong government guidance and also foreign investment. Now, the other one is China. I actually was involved with China. Even they got my book and they pirated my book. And I gave the copy to the Chinese ambassador to the UN. And he said, oh, we read it. It's already in Chinese. I said, what are you talking about? It just came out in English. Well, it's pirated. So all the cities were using that, and all the ministries are using Technopolis. And the reason why is that, unlike Silicon Valley, which is a local phenomenon, it was just kind of spontaneous by Pentagon. But they didn't have a big, each city didn't have a Pentagon, military, unlike Silicon Valley. So the good thing about Technopolis is that it was top-down government, set an overall public-private partnership model, but then each city was responsible for planning their own, raising money, and implementing on their own from bottom up, like Austin did. And that's why China moves so fast. So we already know from Technopolis how you can go from poverty to wealth fast. This time you can do it 10 times or maybe, 100 times faster. It took 10 years for Bangalore because the internet wasn't there yet. Well, we have the internet, we have AI, we have everything there with satellites. So there's no excuse why he can't do it in several years. But that requires government from the top. Now, if government is too slow, my advice is just get them to be an advisor, and then bring in big companies working with nonprofits, Bangladesh nonprofits that have the welfare of the Bangladeshi people in their interest. Let them just drive it technically. And then have the government to make sure that it follows certain ethics and rules and policies, and that's it. But they'll just be more of the kind of just advisory role in that sense. So things don't go crazy, with illegal activities going on. So I think I would do it, but I would really do it what Michael's doing is work locally. That's how Technopolis happened, in Austin, everywhere, is they had a lot of community groups across the city that the city was encouraging to do things and to start building and not waiting. Because if you wait, you'll never build anything. And people will use that as an excuse. So you can't, one thing in Silicon Valley, we just say, just do it. don't give us excuses why you can't do anything. And I think if you have that mentality, we can, we will do it, we are doing it, and not we can't do it because of government and this and that, all these excuses. It's almost like, in California we say, it's like, oh yeah, the dog ate my homework, so therefore I can't do it. So that's total BS for us. We say, it's because you're not driven, you're not working together, you're not disciplined, you're not hungry, you're not driven. And and that's Silicon Valley. And so I think, I really like the two models in what David is talking about and what Michael's talking about. I mean, that's really that's the golden path for any poor nation in this world, not just Bangladesh. So I think if they pursue that two-edged strategy, top down, bottom up, you could move literally in days now, because everything is moving so fast today, and everybody's online. You can access AI now. There's no excuse today, absolutely no excuse.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. PJ, my next question for you. What skill and educational strategies are crucial for individuals to thrive in an AI-powered workforce?
Can you run that by me? I didn't hear the whole question.
My question for you, what skills and educational strategies are crucial for individuals to thrive in an AI-powered workforce?
Well, I think, where I'm at in the Philippines, I'm trying to work with some people that are from very poor areas. And the first thing they need to have is great English skills. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now. I also work with a bunch of people that have, great AI skills and coding skills already, but that's a different group. But for right now, I'm focusing on getting people to learn English, because it's a global world out there, and English is the language that everyone needs to speak, unless they're in China.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. David, my next question for you, and this is last question. How can AI be leveraged to create new economic opportunity and foster entrepreneurship on a global scale? Can you unmute, please?
Sorry. I'd love to answer that question. Let me add a couple points to PJ's answer as well, too, because I think it's important to answer yours as well, because as I look at the skills, it's not just the technical proficiency. It's not just the ability to have English and the others in there. But when we talk about AI generates things based off of really past knowledge, and it doesn't have empathy in things. So one of the skills that has to be taught is critical thinking. And we need to teach people how to evaluate AI generated outputs, how to identify biases, how to identify mistakes, and how to make informed decisions. And we also have to teach more emotional intelligence because the strong interpersonal skills to collaborate effective are necessary as we look at these type of AI human interactions. So to me, those are some of the other skills that really need to be taught. And PJ, I loved your answer, but I think those are skills that are often overlooked. And particularly when we see that back in some of the large learning models we placed, they had so much misinformation, so many errors in them, they can't even do simple math in some instances. So we've got to bring those things to bear there. But to go and answer your question on how to do new economic opportunities, is that we see numerous avenues to create these opportunities on the global scale, as we've talked about before. One of them is streamlining business operations. AI tools can automate repetitive tasks. It lets entrepreneurs, it lets others focus on innovation and strategy. And these can be entrepreneurs in the business sections, But I also see entrepreneurs in government. I also see entrepreneurs in universities and colleges as well. But this is one of the things we're seeing there. We're also going to see more and more predictive analytics help businesses anticipate market trends and uh, help us begin to transition to a time where we have more data driven decisions being made. And I personally believe data driven decisions, particularly on a global basis, is going to really help us create new economic opportunities. The second thing was we're going to see these AI tools really give us a lowering barrier to entry for companies and others because it's going to be able to provide affordable access to resources like what PJ said with marketing, customer services, financial management, technology questions, and others, which are going to enable small businesses and startups to compete with larger enterprises. And this will be through fostering innovation. Because AI accelerates research and development by analyzing very, very vast data sets, identifying patterns, uh, producing scenarios against these multiple patterns, generating insights that drive new product development, and then helping develop the products and develop the ability to take those products to market. And entrepreneurs can leverage AI in almost every industry today because of the horizontal convergence we talked about earlier. But we're going to see the big one, which I've alluded to several times, is global collaboration. AI facilitates these cross-border partnerships by breaking down language barriers and enabling seamless communications. And to enable it in near real time across the global marketplace, and open innovation platforms like what we have at IBION, powered by AI, encourages knowledge sharing and co-creation among all these parties of the Technopolis. And on the commercial side of the Technopolis, it is large companies, medium-sized, small companies, startups, all of those coming together. And with these coming together, what the AI is going to do is let us empower underserved communities. Because, for example, AI-driven microfinance opportunities provide access to capital for entrepreneurs in developing regions. It provides them access to development talent, particularly AI enhanced. It provides them access to markets that they did not have before and to communication tools. And an AI-powered education system in these underserved markets help individuals acquire skills needed to launch and sustain business. And these AI tools, as we begin to see more, provide personalized experiences from marketing to products and services to healthcare to education to government. So that by integrating AI into their strategies, businesses, universities, governments can unlock really an unprecedented opportunities for entrepreneurship, for new wealth creation, for new job creation, and for economic development. And this to me is going to help connect together that global field as we look at the future driven by this, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Mr. Sharidan, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
Hey, let's see. Wow, this is, I think people have covered most of the topics. I think I actually would like to go back to California's 2014, and they said that STEM education wasn't working because people were memorizing books, and that wasn't working. It was putting the children to sleep. And they recommended to do community-based projects, hands-on, that are multi-generational, not just children. And they would develop elders as well as parents to work on projects. So, how to clean up a beach, or how to sanitize, a landfill, things like that. Practical hands-on knowledge where they would learn STEM skills. I mean, now they call it STEM plus the arts, and it's all data driven. In other words, the children go out there and they use all the tools to gather, whether it's chemistry tubes or a phone to gather data, access data. So it's data rich analysis of the problem, and then trying to figure out what's the solution for it. Actually, Google did that 10 years ago with the Amazon jungle. So they taught, native children how to save their forest from illegal loggers, and he stopped them all. And then also for garbage dumps in Indian villages. So Google already did it. Google Earth did it 10, 15 years ago by engaging young people. I think the key is that we're going to see what I call wave or beehive learning. Okay, so when I say wave, it's sort of like trends or fads, like a music fad. So when we see waves of innovation all the time, Silicon Valley, like when ChatGPT, we saw a huge explosion of AI startups and rapid innovation. So that's the kind of, we're going to see waves is when somebody hits something big, everybody's going to copy. So innovation today is going to be really, I call it copying. In other words, one person or one group or a couple of people are going to break through, and then everybody will immediately copy. So you don't have to force people. They're just going to copy on their own because they've discovered a better, faster way to do things. So I think that wave is going to be very common. The other thing is a beehive effect, where I use biomimetic models, where if you get a cluster, well, Austin's done that. If you think of Austin as a beehive, it's a very organic model. It's very informal, and they learn really quickly. And they have a hub, which is the hive, but the bees are off there collecting nectar and ideas and sharing it. So nowadays you can do it on mobile phones. So I think those are two types of models that I think are possible. In fact, if you see at the Olympic Games, or was it recently, or at Chinese events, they have drone swarms. That's a good example. So they have sculptures and really fancy things with 100,000 tiny drones lit up. And each one of those could be a knowledge carrier or connector, right? And they do that now just to show art and things like that, but it could be used for education. So let's say agriculture, whatever you want. You could have a drone force or swarm gathering all the data instantly and automatically displaying everything. So, I think we're going to see a very different business models. I think we're going to look at fractals. It's going to be fun. New fractal models of AI. Swarm models, beehive models, different kind of models that are more either philosophical or mathematical that we aren't thinking about right now. This idea of linear thinking is going to be dead. It's going to be much more complex. So we're going to see more complexity in the models that we use, a higher level thinking now. So, for example, one was, how do we use quantum AI for fractal analysis of water pollution, and how do we solve that problem? Nobody's ever done that. I've never seen it, but it's going to be very common in the future. And then the funny part would be 10-year-old kids doing it as a matter of course. So I think you're going to see some pretty interesting ideas. Now, there's two things when education. One is we're going to see the convergence of the Socratic method of thinking and the scientific method. So basically, Socratic method for the philosophy, the humanities, plus the scientific method for the natural sciences. So we're going to see both sides merging together horizontally, so that everything's integrated. The whole brain, basically, not just left, right brain in the arts. And then we'll see individual AI personalized agents, but connected to hives or communities. So that's where the power is, sort of like the internet now. So, this is going to be a total revolution in the way we do things. I can't even imagine it. For example, I was at Stanford in '94 when internet took off. We couldn't even imagine what would happen. We knew the jobs that would be eliminated, but we couldn't. The explosion was far beyond what we could even imagine back then. So I think it's going to be faster and bigger this time. And it's going to require a lot of creative thinking and innovation. That's just my personal feeling based on what I've seen in the past.
Thank you. This is excellent discussions. Yes, this AI revolutions is happening right now. We are innovating technologies and we are integrating with the society. So we need more partnerships, more collaboration with global North and global South, and we have to work together to solve different complex problems. So that is the things World Talent Economic Forum doing right now. So thank you, Mr. Sharidan Tarsuno. Thank you, Mr. PJ, and thank you, Mr. David Smith, for your excellent support for World Talent Economic Forum. I request all of our audience, please share our content with the government agency, corporation, and academia. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.